Hello, everyone, and welcome to Human SOS Show. My partner Anton is having some technical difficulties and having to log out and back in. He'll be back with us here momentarily, and so I'll do some admin things until Anton can get in. And oh, there he is. Hopefully, all right.
I
Well,
think we're good. Am I good now?
yep, now we're cooking with gas. All right. I didn't have to get too far into a little soft shoe there. We appreciate everyone joining us today and hope that all of you that join us will let us know where you're joining from. And hopefully, you'll also share your thoughts and comments and questions today. It always makes it more enjoyable and interesting when you do that. Welcome, Sharon. Glad to have you with us this morning. So, Anton, you want to introduce our topic today?
Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the audio issues. So today before I even get into what we're gonna talk about today, as always, the Human SOS show focuses on humanly sustainable environments, humanly sustainable organizations, humanly sustainable society, you name it. And really, at the core of that is leadership, right? The way that people are led at work, the way that people are led in all other areas of life is going to have a lot to do with how sustainable things are. We know that quickly people can get burnt out by having a bad leader. And oftentimes, it doesn't necessarily mean bad intentioned leader. Sometimes it can mean, leader that just doesn't understand their people. They mean well, but they're not paying attention to the team dynamic, to the environment, whatever it may be. So today we're going to talk about what are those leadership qualities for a leader of the present, right? I think that as society shifts over the years, Kevin and I talk about this all the time, the type of leader that's ideal for the environment that they're in also changes, which is also going to change the type of qualities that they have, the type of qualities that they must not master. So, opening it up right out the gate for the audience, name some of the qualities that you think are necessary for leaders to be successful, for leaders to lead in the way that people want to be led, and also in a way that still delivers results. Because, it's one thing just to give people what they want, but if it's ineffective, it's not going to work out in the long run. So we need to be giving people, meeting them where they are, but at the same time, still finding ways to be successful and effective. So what are some of those things that come to mind for you as the audience? Kev, how about yourself? What are some of the things that pop to mind for you?
Leadership qualities, humility, such an important foundational quality. One that is easier said than done is patience. And I think that as we always talk about EQ, emotional quotient, empathy, that's an important part. And willingness to make hard decisions and to take responsibility and acceptance, accepting ourselves, accepting others. So that's just a few. What about you?
Well, let's just start unpack them. Instead of just listing them off, obviously, let's dive a little deeper and start with you said humility.
Yeah.
How do you see that humility is a must in today's world? I feel like humility probably wasn't should have been effective a long time ago, but I don't think it's always been a present quality in most leaders. It used to be a sign of a weakness and considered, especially in business circles. Why do you feel that in today's world humility is such an important quality?
Well, first of all, when I think of leadership qualities, I don't always look to business leaders because I'm not sure that business leaders have grasped leadership qualities like others that have impacted our world. And you look at those that have impacted our world remarkably out throughout history, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Jesus, and so on. One of the key traits in all cases is humility. Dr. King, they all demonstrated the quality of humility because to be an effective leader, you have to be able to step back. You have to be able to step out of the focus and let your team members be the focus. And that means laying aside your demands or your expectations sometimes, or your rights even, to in order to effectively lead a team, and because team needs to know that it's not all about you. And because if it's all about you, then it's no longer leading. It is an authoritarian position, or as we reference quite often, a boss or a manager. And so humility to me is the key to avoiding being that stereotypical boss. We see all the memes and everything about those. So, by the way, shout out to Lydia and Eunice and Nerden. Glad to have you all this morning. So, what quality would you jump on there, Anton? And
Well, yeah, I mean, just to comment on your comment with the leaders you mentioned, absolutely, some of the top leaders to ever existed. But the reason I say business leaders, and it doesn't even to business leaders, but it's achievable levels of leadership that everybody thinks they can possess and obtain. Sometimes when we say these, great leaders of the past, people are like, well, I can never be that, right? So I try to keep the conversation more around what's within our circles, within very close
sure.
reach of attainability and more relevancy. Um, but honestly, like I like your point of humility. I think that's really important, because if you're not humble, it doesn't connect into ability. It doesn't get you to the ability to connecting with your people.
Mm,
I've talked about this many times, and if you can't connect with your people, you can't build relationships with them. So
mm,
obviously, that quality is relationship building. I think that's one of the top qualities that leaders of today must possess. And it's a very important one. And it's not just the surface level of being liked. It's yes, you do
mm,
want to be liked, but in order to build a relationship, you have to have trust, both character trust and capability trust, right? That's what you have to establish. Because if I only trust you from character, but I don't think you have strong capability, I'm not going to listen to you very much when you provide an organizational
mm,
direction, or vice versa. If I only trust you with capability, but I don't trust you with character trust, I'm going to say that you don't have my best interest in mind. You're going to take care
mhm.
of yourself first. If there's a fire, you're going to run out the door before you worry about saving me. So, really relationship building and trust are kind of the ones that come to mind right out the gate for me.
Oh yeah, relationship is essential for a leader. Welcome, Zaid and Suzette and Jamie. Glad to have you with us today. Yeah, you can't lead without relationship. And the interesting challenge for a leader is that the relationship that we have as a leader is an interesting combination of being in a position to lead, but not in that position to be better than or above those that you're leading. And that's a hard one. That's a challenge for a leader, because as a leader we have a lot more responsibility and we have accountability more than others. And so sometimes it's easy to feel like that we should have some kind of special set aside of or something. And the tendency is to want to call on authority. And in some situations, we have that authority. The question becomes, do we use it as we try to lead? And so, yeah, relationships essential. And it has to be beyond, and especially current culture, it has to be beyond the relationship at work. Doesn't mean that we got to be best buds or anything like that. But if it's only centered around the work environment, then we're going to again be limited in our ability to effectively lead.
Absolutely. Another quality that comes to mind is ability to rapidly change.
Mm,
That our world, we know, I think it's Moore's law that talks about, technology, for example, doubles in size every, I think, 18 months. Somebody correct me if I'm
yeah.
wrong. And I think it's probably even faster now. I mean, honestly, the rapid change is not going away. It's only going to get faster.
Mm,
And really not just change processes and systems, but it's bring your people along the journey in a way that makes them want to change, in the way that might makes them want to succeed at it, in a way that makes them want to continue to be led through this change. And that's why change management, which is what I do, has become such a big industry for consultants, because many people, many leaders don't fully understand how to change. I keep running into this over and over and over, right? Let's get the processes done. Let's get the systems done. Let's get some communication out there and let's run with it. But all of a sudden, go live happens and people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? Maybe the training didn't happen as well because they weren't getting feedback from the people on what they needed and meeting them where they are. Maybe just there's blunt resistance to it, where people are so tired of the change and not being, providing, not being listened to when they're going through a change. So I think that honestly, I think it's one of the biggest gaps that I see in current leadership is ability to change on the people side, not just systems and processes, but really that, like, not your project management type of change. We're very good at that, but more on that human centered type of change.
Yeah, and the challenge is, unlike technology, software, hardware, whatever, that is plug and play, and it's at wherever it is, versus people. We're all at different stages in our life and learning curves and different aspects of it. So part of the art form of being an effective leader is the ability to bring along change, but at different levels, at different paces, and different levels of maturity, I guess, among your team. Because our teams rarely, I suppose it's possible and would maybe have a nice benefit, but rarely are our teams homogenous in terms of where they are it related to change in general or specific aspects of change. And that's something that we have to really be mindful of. We've got a couple of comments here. Zaid makes the comment that pride comes before destruction, referencing the concept of humility and the value there. And then Suzette makes a comment. She says, I am always concerned about the lack of understanding leaders have as far as accountability. One of the challenges that, we talk about humility, and a lot of people, and especially my generation, we start talking like that. They usually have eye rolls and go, oh, here we go again. We're going to have to sit around and sing Kumbaya or have group hugs or, those kinds of things. And that's because they assume that leadership does not involve accountability. And leadership has to involve accountability. And in fact, we misunderstand about accountability and truth and things of concepts of that type, and assume that we have to give those up to be empathetic, and that's not true. What about you, man? How do you think that there's a lack of understanding among leaders?
It's a tough one. I think that society, like, and I think you're absolutely right. I think it's forced on by society a little bit because of some misunderstandings. People, Lydia says, empathy, kindness, a caring heart matters, and I absolutely agree. And because people are talking about that so much to overcome some of the mistakes in the past, right, where people didn't have that empathy, didn't care as much about the person, we really kind of tend to make it seem like accountability is a bad thing, because when those two are put side by side, most people don't look at it and say, the way that I hold you accountable matters, and I can do it in a way that is empathetic, kind, and caring. Me not holding you accountable oftentimes is actually the opposite of being empathetic, kind, and caring, because I'm going to let you fail and burn. I'm just going to replace you with somebody else if the time comes. That's kind of how it ends up being. And I've talked about the story a few times on the podcast. March 2015, I loved on my team. I had a team of about 30 team members, and I gave them as much as I possibly could. I worked crazy hours myself. I developed any sort of person any way they wanted to. My door was not just open. I was pulling people in as much as they can. understanding who they were, tailoring the development and communication to their styles. But the one thing I wasn't doing is I wasn't holding them accountable. I thought that if I developed them enough, their drive to do the things that they need to do to be successful would simply show up. They gained the skills, they got better, they liked me a lot. And in March 2015, I had 5 people quit in 1 month. And 4 of those 5 people came and cried in my office that they were letting me down, that they were quitting because they couldn't afford to pay their bills. It was a commission environment where hourly rate was very small. So they have to stay accountable to doing certain tasks in order to make sure they make the commission they need to feed their families, to pay their bills, whatever it may be. And I, as a leader, just thought all I could do is just love on them, care for them, give them, education and keep developing them, give them the opportunities. But I still wasn't holding them accountable to what commitments they needed to execute, right? In sales, it's a very simple thing. What leading indicators, KPIs, are you going to do in order to get the lagging results that come from those KPIs? And the way to do that, for example, that's another thing that leaders have to be, another quality leads me into, is they have to be great coaches. It's not about me coming and telling you, hey, you didn't do your job today. You need to be better, blah, 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 blah. That's not it. That's micromanagement. I don't need to be breathing down your neck. At the beginning of the month, we talk about it. We understand, what does this look like? Do you see your goal? Do you understand everything? Now let's talk about how you want to accomplish that. How do you want to bring that to life on a daily basis? Do you want me, and then also, how do you want me to hold you accountable? What do you feel comfortable with? Is it an email? Is it a conversation? Do I just need to show you a dashboard once in a while? Like, tailoring it to each individual, but letting them drive the bus per se, right? And then when you're holding them accountable, they don't feel micromanaged because they're the ones that stepped in there and picked that route. And all I'm doing is just making sure that they're on track for where they said they wanted to be.
Yep. And going back to Suzette's comment, and I want to kind of approach it differently. I think that the first part of her comment is a bigger issue, even than specifically about accountability, is that I'm always concerned about the lack of understanding leaders have. One of the problems in our current system is we are putting people into leadership that are not prepared. They've not received appropriate training, and rarely do they have the life experience that will lead to the core components of being a good leader. So before we put people in leadership roles based on you're good at whatever, so we're going to put you in a leadership role related to the people that you were part of, but we're not going to offer you any effective training. Just as the way I used to put it is, here's your clipboard and keys, go and do and take charge of your team. And that's not a good way, but it's still a way that happens a lot in our business world, and even at times in non-business settings. So just that lack of understanding is a bigger problem in all regards for leadership out there. Welcome, Rick, and welcome, Hawk. Glad to have you all with us today. And just a reminder, what are some qualities that you see as important to be an effective leader? Anton drew that out in the beginning. So we still like to hear your thoughts on what are some characteristics. And by the way, a part of this is at some point, at a minimum, we're going to need to be leaders of ourselves. We're going to have to lead ourselves, and these same qualities matter to us. So when we consider these qualities, we need to look at our own situation. What are the qualities that we have? And then what are the qualities that we need to grow into to effectively lead ourselves, and in that way be prepared if we have the opportunity or make the choice to take on leadership responsibility for others. So just something to consider. This is not just about others, but we have to consider looking in the mirror as well.
As you're talking about this, unprepared leaders, it just made me think of another quality that's really important, that's more relevant than it used to be. And that's kind of what I want to keep focusing on is, right, there's a lot of qualities leaders need to possess. But modern times have created some challenges that are even bigger deal, and it's ability to hyper customize the development of the team member. It's the ability to hyper customize the development of the future leader, right? It's not here's all leaders and they need to focus on empathy and that's the biggest thing they need. No, there's people that absolutely need to learn and grow in that space. But maybe some people need to focus more on accountability. Some people need to focus more on coaching. Some people need to focus more on driving the team, really pushing and motivating and those different things. And it's not about here's this one package that fits every need of every future leader. No, it's do an assessment, understand where they are, better yet, really get to know them, understand where they are, and then tailor their development early on before it's needed to put into action that fills the gaps, right? And creating that well-rounded leader. I think that's another quality that we must have is we have to be well-rounded now. We can't just be a certain way and really rely on those strengths to overshadow some of our weaknesses. Everything is just so public, so out there. You really have to be a well-rounded leader. Like even Elon Musk, and I'm going to use him as an example, who is a genius and an absolutely brilliant mind. But even his teams pay the price. His stock pays the price because he's not well-rounded in certain areas. His communication style is not the best. Had he polished that up a little bit and developed that more, company would be doing much better. That's just the reality of it. But that's like the really broad, really big picture view. But that happens on small scale everywhere, and we can't get away with it anymore.
Got several comments. Suzette comments that round pegs and square holes is part of the problem. We've got people we're putting in leadership that shouldn't be, and knowing when you're not fulfilling the position, that is recognition of being accountable. Yeah. Again, the challenge of being a leader is that you've got to help others get what they need to do and be. At the same time, you got to do that for yourself. So the reason some people don't need to be in positions of leadership is they don't have the desire or the drive to be responsible for that much. The people and what is involved in that. Let's see here. Hawk makes a comment: a leader who aren't able to fill every role in the company, from cleaning toilets to fixing computers, isn't worth much. And so your comment about being well-rounded, Anton, Hawk seems to be echoing. And part of that's about the willingness to do the less than ideal task. And what's really funny is what those ideal tasks are varies from person to person. So we can't always assume that if we just keep avoiding doing certain tasks for our team members, that everybody's going to be happy. Can't even get that fat and that homogenous in our approach.
Yeah.
Let's see. Rick comments: I've learned to be more like Moses, learn to delegate. Yeah, that's a characteristic of leadership that's really a problem in a lot of frontline leaders currently. I teach field leadership all the time, and the ability and the willingness to delegate, because there are other issues that leaders face, and it can be a bit scary trying to delegate under certain circumstances, but it's a necessary part of what needs to happen. Although we may know how to do most of the things involved, we don't have, as a leader, we don't have time to do all the things. That's why we have a team. And the importance is to delegate, and the other part of that's empower those that we delegate to.
Yeah, and I want to jump at that comment myself. Hopefully this is louder. I think Zaid was saying my mic is quiet, so I'm hopefully adjusted that. But this ability to delegate is so important because of complexity of the business landscape. Mm-hmm. In the past, things used to be simpler. Anytime things stick around longer and technology becomes mixed in, and we do so much more as businesses than we ever did. We're not these single focused kind of, institutions, organizations. We have a lot of complexity. If you don't delegate, you're going to burn out. So it's a very big deal right now. Leadership burnout is way worse than employee burnout. If you look at the actual numbers, there's significantly higher leadership burnout than employee burnout. It's just they don't get talked about as much, right? Because as leaders, you're supposed to be paid for it and you're supposed to take on that kind of burden and survive through it. But the reality is, when you're burned out, your team pays for it, right? It's not just you. So a lot of servant leaders, they're burning themselves out, thinking they're doing, they're doing something for somebody by taking on more than they should, not delegating enough, and really just, covering that. Yet at the same time, now you're less effective as a developer. Now you're less effective as a relationship builder. Now you're a less effective communicator. Now just who knows? There's so many of these qualities that we talked about depend on your state of mind being where it needs to be. If you're burnt out, all of those things go out the window and everything becomes worse.
Yeah, and along those lines, and this is something that I've had to learn in leadership, is that I am high on responsibility and accountability, and part of that is that the mission doesn't fail regardless, and that can be a problem. It's a great principle, it's a great characteristic, but out of balance, it's unhealthy, and it's not good for your team. Because if you say the mission can't fail, that means that you go to a point, an extreme point on that, that means there's no room for your team to fail. And if we don't allow for our team to have moments of failure, doesn't mean that they're failures, just that we all make mistakes and there are opportunities to learn, and we've got to make room for that. And if we are, as a leader, unwilling to let the mission fail, that implies that we aren't going to allow others to have failing moments. And if we don't, they don't learn and we get burned out. Short version. All right, let's see. Zaid makes comment, would say honesty and transparent communications, not a sneaky going around way. Oh, yeah. That is a huge one, no doubt about it. Thoughts on area of communication?
I see, I'm going to use the leader of the company I work for, our CEO for North America at least. He addresses all relevant events in society today. When there is mass shootings happening, when there is different things happening, he doesn't stay quiet. He talks about his view on it. I'm not talking about politics. I'm just talking about he talks about his view. He talks about what's happening. He talks about what we're doing, around it. So not just communication within the four walls of organization, but communication outside of it as well, because we live in the world that's full of uncertainty. And we need to, as people, see that our leaders are paying attention to that and they have us on their mind thinking about it, right? So transparency doesn't always mean I'm honest. It's actually talking about everything that needs to be talked about versus just certain things that involve business. So that's the more modern thing, coming back to the leadership qualities of the modern leader, is not just focusing on the four walls of your organization when communicating, but looking at the whole environment, the big picture, and making sure, because life and work, the separation has disappeared, right? This thing that we talk about, work-life balance, when Kevin talk about it, there's no such thing. It's work-life congruence. They've learned to coexist. They've learned to integrate a lot. My life and work are super integrated, right? I have the freedom of being able to, in the middle of the day, go to a yoga class, take my kids to school, pick my kids up, feed them, and then do work, sporadically throughout that time, because I work from home, obviously, most of the time. And it's important for leaders to see that. So, to be able to also help with that work-life congruence.
Sure. I realized that I think I skipped over a couple of comments that are really good. Hawk talks about encourage and compliment in public, critique in private. Oh, wow. Such a key characteristic and it, to me, that is one of the differentiations between being a boss and being a leader, is that very one. Thoughts on that?
That's a good one. That's actually a really good one to bring up, and I don't disagree. But to an extent, there's a caveat to it. Remember, I mentioned hyper customization. Even our praise has to be hyper
Uh,
customized.
yeah,
That kind of is a more broad stroke approach where some people don't want to be recognized in public. That
right.
they may feel like it's threatening to other employees. They may feel like it puts a bullseye on their back. They may just not enjoy that public. They're very introverted and they don't enjoy being put on a spot. So this is that next level, right?
Mm,
Is really having the relationship and tailoring your praise to where they need to receive. Now we know for sure you never critique in public. We know that no matter what. But then when it comes to praise, tailor it to the individual versus kind of a broad stroke approach.
right. Yeah, and it's part of the mindfulness of a leader. You can't just operate as a leader with formulas anymore. It doesn't work because we've got to go to principles, and they have to be a larger set of principles that rather than trying to zero in on specific steps involved. Let's see. Lydia says, servanthood, a genuine heart that cares for others. And that's part of servant leadership is actually having genuine concern and being able to live that. That is a component piece of that relationship we talked about earlier. Let's see. Sharon makes a comment. I had been in a situation where a manager went to humiliate a young man in front of everyone. I spoke up and I told him that if he had anything to say to the young man, take him in a room in private, not in front of everyone. So encourage in public should be done. Should be done and not critiquing. Oh, encourage in public and should not be done critiquing in public, where everyone is squirming and when just push a button and disappear. But as Anton said, be mindful. Some people, it's painful and uncomfortable for them to be in the spotlight. So, general terms, that's a good approach is to compliment publicly and critique privately, but with the caveat, some people don't like the spotlight. And I'll tell you, personal experience as a youngster in school, one of the last things I wanted was to be recognized in front of the class, good or bad. And when it happened, it was painful. And so, yeah, be mindful of that with people. We need to, just as Anton said, we got to customize. Let's see. Okay, Zaid makes a comment. Says, I think about the ability to set a healthy environment, not spying and backstabbing kind of environment. Secure. Our team needs to feel secure among their team and with the leader. A security in being able to be who they are. Anton, your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, and I totally agree. Just different thing came to my mind. Healthy environment, not just from cultural standpoint, but also truly from health standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a leader, another current state leadership quality I think is important, is be a positive pull against negative society norms, right?
Mm.
So what I mean by that is be a role model that pulls people in against the direction where society pulls them in a negative way, right? Like people that are not taking care of their health, people that are not taking care of their mental health, right? All those things, normalizing those things and making them part of the office environment as much as possible and setting the example. Like one of the things that we've talked about with Kevin, if like we were to come into a company and we were to set the culture to be a healthy culture, the leader would have a private Slack channel where they would be communicating with people. Well, I mean, internally private, communicating with people on all the different fun things that they do, encouraging them to do it themselves, providing opportunities to do them fun from like the health standpoint, discussing anything to do with mental health and normalizing it, right? So society kind of pulls us in a negative direction. Too much technology, too much, social media, too much, whatever it may be, and they need to help to pull them in the other direction and not push. Notice I say the word pull by being a role model.
Mm. That's the power of a leader, role modeling. If you want to define the power of leadership, that is the primary power of leadership is role modeling. Let's see here. Hawk makes a comment. One leadership quality I appreciate is knowing that people in your team may be better than you at specific tasks and to acknowledge that fact. That's part of the value of humility, is to be able to recognize, hey, you do this better than I do. And even to a point of saying, since you do this better than I do, why don't you help teach the team about this thing? Anton, thoughts there?
No, 100%. It's coming back to humility, but it's also coming back to optimization. There's a couple ways of looking at it. One is I'm humble enough to say that, but two is I actually know who is best to do what to do which task. Right? Some things I may be best for, some things I may enlist help, some things we may do as a team. And being able to do what Hawk talks about is at the core of that.
All right, let's see. Another comment from Hawk. He says that he prefers having JC, Jesus Christ, as a role model, washing the feet of his team. That is a powerful metaphor. I think the key is that when we look at characteristics of leadership, that we see different ones demonstrated in different leaders. But certainly for me, Jesus is the ultimate example of leadership and how it's done well. Thoughts on that one, Anton?
No, you're spot on. I mean, and it's funny because, not funny, but it's just the reality. When we talk about Jesus Christ as a role model, yes, he was a servant leader, but he had accountability.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of mixes it back into the conversation that we started with. He was the right mix of empathy, care, love, but at the same time, hey, here's the path. We need to stay on this path. It's not go wander wherever you want and whatever. I'm still going to love you, but I need to direct you on the right path.
Yeah, yeah. Jesus had a lot of the caring soft side, but he showed that he was very capable of having the strong, firm side as well. Let's see. Suzette makes a comment that showing vulnerability is important. Yeah, if all we appear is to be untouchable and better than everyone else, we lose that relationship connection of really of empathy at the end of the day. Thoughts on that one?
No, so true. I mean, we've talked about this. That ties back into Hawk's comment saying, I'm not the best at everything. We have people better than that, and I'm going to get out of the way when that's needed.
Yeah. All right. ATIF makes a comment. We need humble leaders, but usually humble people do not strive for leadership roles. On the other hand, ambitious people projecting confidence and kiss up and kick down usually are offered leadership positions. Jack Welch, Steve Jobs are creative go-getters and workaholic, but they mercilessly worked to get business results and didn't care what they destroyed in getting the business results. Our businesses are still operated by two motivations, fear and greed. And I can appreciate the comment, but that's part of the problem, is that it is a not driven by humility, but what's happening is, and this is part of the reason for the human SOS movement, is to shift some of that perspective. And part of that's redefining humility. People think humility is cowering and bow down and all that. Not at all. Real humility is a place of power that's remarkable. And we see that in different ways throughout history. I mean, think about Dr. King and the civil rights movement and the fact that they were hit with fire hoses and all kinds of things, but their response was one of humility. So redefining the understanding about humility becomes an important factor. And yes, there is a lot of the, I love the phrase kiss up and kick down kind of mentality out there. But part of what we've got to do is help shift that. And the other one, some of the business leaders that we see out there, even coaches, Vince Lombardi if you learn more about these guys other than the public persona, many of them have a compassionate side and were some of the most charitable people and so on. They got the relationship piece. It just wasn't publicized a whole lot. Anton, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, that comment from Atif. We humble leaders are usually don't strive for leadership. So that leads me to another very important leadership quality of the modern world is creating a diverse environment, inclusive and diverse environment, right? So it's not just about accepting people; it's being strategic with diversity, right? It's understanding that I need humble leaders in my organization. I am short of that right now. So I need to go and develop, encourage, and motivate some people that may not want leadership for whatever reason. It's not that most people don't want to lead. It's just they may look at the leadership as a different thing than what it really can be for them. So it's letting them see the positives behind it, letting them see that they can be themselves and that they can lead the way that they want to lead because we actually need more of that. As an example, making sure that women leadership, there's more women in leadership, period, has been a focus for many organizations. And we're seeing more and more women starting to become Fortune 500 CEOs. Very underrepresented group still, but it's starting to happen more and more because people are realizing that this is happening. But also people are society is making a conscious effort to go out there and recruit and build young women leaders. So it's not just about gender, right? It's a quality that happens to be, common with women. So we tend to go there a lot more, but it's a quality that men possess as well. It's recognizing it earlier, planting a seed into those people that they're capable, they can do this, and then slowly building the desire to move in that position. Just because somebody doesn't want leadership in the beginning doesn't mean they can't want it later after they've had some success and some belief built into them.
And just I agree with Atif that real leaders rarely are seeking leadership roles. But they do seek to make a difference in the lives of other people and include, in their immediate surrounding plus in a bigger picture. And so I agree with you that striving to be a leader is not a quality that is a critical quality. It can be helpful, but the bigger quality is that a servant leader is seeking to make a change, an improvement, and they're willing to be an example even before they're given an official role. And so that's part of what we're trying to change, ATIF, is the rewarding or awarding of roles of leadership to people that don't understand what real servant leadership is about. That's part of the sustainable change that needs to happen. So let's see. Hawk makes a comment, says, very true, Anton, but when you compliment on the work done, not personal qualities. Even introverted employees tend to appreciate that. How we deliver, the key takeaway is how we deliver compliments or critiques needs to be a very thoughtful process. And as Anton mentioned, customized. We can't do a broad stroke, one size fits all approach anymore. That's part of what has caused problems trying to manage people. We set up this one checkbox and try to put everybody in it, and it doesn't work anymore. It wasn't real good before. It's just that we had a different generational culture that allowed for it. But even among my generation that allowed for it, it wasn't the best way to lead, because when we looked at examples of good leadership, most of the time we weren't looking at business people. We were looking at sports coaches and people like that. So I get that. Did you want to respond to that one, Anton?
No, you hit it on the head. Words. There's more comments though.
Yeah, Rick's got one. I was just going to not move on until you, since
you're good. You're
okay.
Good.
So Rick says we need to see the value of not being the smartest person in the room. Yeah, I know there's some out there that say, if you're not the smartest person, no, in fact, you don't need to be this. If you're in the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, I believe is saying. Thoughts on that one, Anton?
No, it's true. And it's not about being the smartest person in the room, but there's almost like a pivot off that comment. You need to know where you may know best and still have the firm belief that you need to move that way, even though the team disagrees, right? Like sometimes you're going to have disagreements on your team, and you as a leader have to stand firm. Now, it's not about saying your opinion doesn't matter to me. It's not about not providing space to provide that opinion, but sometimes you have to say, you know what, I really appreciate your input, but this is why we're going to have to go this way. And we're going to check in and see how things are going. If things are not going well, maybe we pivot and we go with your route. But it's something that I've seen lack of conviction in their own decisions. It just kind of start happening because we're really trying to be democratic as leaders. And sometimes that's not the right thing to do. Sometimes you do happen to have the best answer. It's just how about you go pursuing that answer to where everybody else feel included and part of the solution is really the skill set.
Let's see here. And Hawk makes a comment, if you happen to be the smartest, no need to shout it from the mountains. If we are always touting our own ability and position, we've got a problem as a leader. Because, again, that's part of the value humility. We don't need to be bragging on ourselves. If we're bragging on ourselves, we got another problem that we need to address, and it's won't work well as a leader. Let's see. Good discussion, by the way. This makes the show much more interesting and insightful. Fun fact from your comment, Rick, I assume GB is Great Britain. Potential police were put through a cognitive test. Scoring too high, IQ of 120, I believe, was a disqualifying factor. Yeah, sometimes we can be too smart for our own good. Is that the message there? Let's see. Mary's kind enough to offer support here. Thanks for this outstanding material you've shared with us, Kevin and Anton, is much needed. Let's see. Hawk makes a comment. Mary Stewart, this is the live I really make an effort to attend. Wisdom in business, a rare quality. Yeah. Wisdom, period, has become a rare quality. And Mary responds, I also make the effort to listen and gain knowledge and understanding. So leadership qualities, key consideration. What are they? Do we have them? Do the leaders around us have them? Because part of our growth may be if we're not the leader, and this is something rarely talked about, but one of the most effective things we need to be at times is the best follower there is. And as part of being the best follower, we are supporting the leader even when it's not the way we would do it, and recognizing those leadership qualities and respecting them. Thoughts on that, Anton? Wow, we got a little bit of time. I thought we're out of time.
I have to jump though. I got to get ready for a call here in 9 minutes, but I just want to leave people with folks with this last one. We talk about many of these qualities, and some of them are changing. Some of them are from the previous times that have been around for centuries. What's really important for a model leader also is to stay current with the development that they need. Right? Continue to develop yourself to adjust to the current times, to adjust to your team's needs, to adjust to all these different things that are going on by being present and paying attention and being aware. So just continue to learn, continue to develop. Don't just learn to learn, understand what is needed and then go fill that gap. But I just want to thank everybody so much for joining. Kev will keep chatting with you guys for a few minutes here, but I got to jump off, and I will see you all next week.
Take care. We'll see you. Bye. So, so characteristics of leadership, and to Anton's point, part of a quality of a leader is a growth mindset. I've been around more longer than a lot of people out there. It's just the season of life that I'm in, and it is that I still need to learn and grow each day. Because if as a leader I'm not willing to grow and learn, then I begin to atrophy. Especially as Anton talked about earlier, the fast movement and change that we're experiencing in the world. And if we're a leader, we've got to be adjusting with those changes and learning how to be current with what's going on. Doesn't mean that all change is good. And as a leader, we need to be able to differentiate what is good and what is not. And so growth mindset is another quality. And Zaid makes a comment that is so true. Let's also not forget that you don't need a title to be a leader. I agree completely with that, Zaid. I would even suggest that anybody that relies on their title to try to be a leader lacks the qualities of leadership they need. Because, and I'll give an example. I serve in the military, and one of the things that is always telling whether a military leader is an effective leader or not is whether they're always, the term we use, pulling rank. In other words, I'm higher ranked than you are. You're going to do what I tell you to do regardless. And if and even in the military, we've come to recognize that if that is your approach all the time, or even most of the time, you lack leadership qualities that you need to be able to effectively lead and effectively get people to follow even into tough situations. And a key mark of a real leader is loyalty. And an effective leader will have followers, have part of their team that are indeed loyal. And like in the military, that's important because sometimes in war situations, a military leader has to charge into the bullets and need people willing to follow them in that lead. And so loyalty is another quality, and it goes both ways, by the way. So let's see here. Zaid makes another comment, said, growth is very important, but it shouldn't be done under the stick of the leader or leaders of organization. You can't beat a tree to grow. We need to nurture the people. And you're right. It goes to approach. Whether we're truly a leader, and see, in my estimation, the only true leader is a servant leader, and a servant leader doesn't use the stick approach most of the time. It is sometimes needed, has to be done with love, motivated by the right approach, but sometimes the most loving thing we can do is apply the stick. But if that's the way we're always doing things, then we've got a leadership problem. And Hawk makes the comment, quiet authority beats screaming authoritarian officers. Yes. In fact, again, one of the qualities of a servant leader, an effective leader, is the ability to be quiet and still impact those that are part of their team. The more we can learn how to say a lot of what needs to be said by example, the greater the impact that we have on our team, and the better it is for us from a healthy standpoint as a leader. Because part of the reason we get burned out is that we are spending so much energy approaching how to get the things accomplished with our team, for our team, that when we go about it the wrong way, we expend a lot of energy that was never intended to be that way. And when we start realizing that some of our choices as a leader is causing us to expend unnecessary energy and time, because most leaders, their biggest challenge is they're always up against their time limitations to accomplish things. And if that's the case as a leader, you've got some leadership challenges, such as a lack of delegating. And so such a key piece. And one of the other key parts is the ability to be able to build the culture for the team. And there's a whole body of learning in regards to that. And it's something that when I teach leaders that I always teach, and that is about group dynamic and how to build the environment, the culture for a team to be able to grow and thrive. And it also allows us, if we build that culture, to be able to apply the proper leadership styles to best nurture and strengthen and grow a team. So there's a lot to the whole picture. And so we're running down on time. And thank you, everyone, for the great comments and sharing your thoughts. And so hopefully today we've taken away a lot about characteristics of being a good leader. And by the way, we also hopefully learn that we don't have to be in leadership roles to be leaders. And we also really, I would suggest not to seek out leadership. Lead yourself in such a way that if you need to be a leader, that it will become evident and you will readily move into that. And I know that in the business world, we don't always get the ideal, but as long as we accept what is not ideal, we'll never change or grow in what we're doing. So don't give up. If you're someone that has leadership qualities and could be a good leader, but you're working in an environment where real leadership isn't necessarily espoused or respected, give it time. Most anyone ultimately will recognize good leadership and desire to fall in under that leadership to get whatever accomplished. So don't be weary in well-doing. Keep after it. Keep growing. Be mindful and intentional as a leader. And remember that all of us at the end of the day may not be in roles of official titled roles of leadership, but we're leaders, all of us, all the time. So beware and grow into leadership qualities for yourself and for others. So thank you, everyone. Great conversation today. And we'll be back next Tuesday with the next episode of the Human SOS Show. And if you think of a topic that you would like to see us discuss, we're always open to that. So share those in the comments. And even if you think of it later, that's okay, because we will be monitoring the feedback along the way. So thank you, everybody. Y'all are the reason that we have a great time, and see you next week. God bless for rest of your week. Take care.